Hello, I'm Ernie Manouse. Coming up on Interviews, our conversation with the executive producer of Masterpiece, Rebecca Eaton. What do you think is the secret to good storytelling?
You need a plot like a freight train. You need a protagonist, man or woman, that is in some kind of jeopardy, that you care so much about you just can't wait to find out what's going to happen. And then you need somebody who can execute this with all the frills, which means a beautiful setting or a really interesting setting. And if it's drama, storytelling on television, then you need eye candy. You need gorgeous people or a gorgeous setting, house, countryside, and then all the other bells and whistles, which are the music, the soundtrack, the makeup, in period drama, the bonnets and the frocks. And then you're done. It's very easy, actually.
Yeah, if you have all that, though, how come some work and some don't?
Oh, Ernie, if I knew that, I would be paid more than the $1.25 that I'm paid to do this job. I don't know. It's kind of magic. It is kind of alchemy. Julian Fellows, who wrote, created, writes every word of Downton Abbey, says he doesn't know. There are certain things you have to have, and any producer knows you have to have them. You do have to have a script that you can't put down, that the dialogue is realistic, that there's pace and there's drama. But even if you get that right, sometimes it doesn't work. Right. It is often, it's in the hands of the writer, the producer, the director, and the actor. I mean, it sounds as if that's, common knowledge, but if all four of them are in sync, then you've got a shot at a hit. But they're very, very few hits.
Are you in a better position today to pick what will be a hit than you were when you started?
I would like to think so. Before I started or before Downton Abbey?
When you started with Masterpiece.
Oh, gosh, yes. Oh, yes. Yes, see, I'm a bookworm, and I have a weakness for actors. My mother was an actress, and I love to watch good acting. So sometimes I would have sort of tunnel vision. This is back in the day when we would be offered finished programs from our British partners. So all I had to do was to screen them and decide, yeah, we'll take that series, take that series. It wasn't co-producing them from the ground up. And I would look at them and get, just fall in love with one actor and just want to watch what that actor, kind of ignoring what some of the other flaws were in the story. So I have made a few mistakes because of that weakness, or because it was based on a book that I had loved reading as a child, because I loved reading English literature when I grew up. Yeah.
In the Masterpiece galaxy, does star power trump story? Does story trump star power?
So interesting. These are good questions, Ernie. These are very good questions. Let's see, star power. I think story trumps star power, because we have done a few vehicles, as we call them in the business, with a star. I won't mention which ones they are, and they just didn't land. They didn't really capture the interest. And then we have done some stories which nobody had heard of the actors in them. And I would even venture with Sherlock, for instance, just to mention the recent Sherlock that we've done. The name Benedict Cumberbatch was not a household name. It wasn't on everyone's lips before we did it. Now, the star power there, you might say, is the name Sherlock, or is Arthur Conan Doyle. But the way it was done was imaginative, the way Stephen Moffat wrote it, and then in came these unknown actors, and who knew whether they could pull it off or not, and now look. So.
Okay, take me all the way back. Little Rebecca.
Little Rebecca.
What was she like?
Kind of lost in her own world, I was a reader from very early on, and also a player with dolls, and just a make-believe person. I grew up in Southern California, a combination of Southern California and an island off the coast of Maine, where I would spend my summers, with short little visits to New York City. My mother had been an actress on Broadway. My father was an academic, and I loved period books about little girls growing up in colonial times or historical biographies. And then when I got old enough to read the classics, I wanted to be Elizabeth Bennet from Pride and Prejudice. I wanted to be Dorothea. I wanted to walk on the moors in the rain. And in Southern California, there's no rain, there are no moors. So went to movies. My father took me to the movies. My mother would take me to see Broadway plays.
It's interesting when you mention what your father did and what your mother did and what you do today.
Yep.
How they both.
Yep.
But that isn't where you were headed initially.
No, I was headed, initially, and always my plan A, and this is for a liberated woman to say, but it's actually the truth. I always just wanted to have 4 children. Yeah. I wanted to live in a house and be the mother of a big family. I think I did. I mean, who knows if I really did. But I love kids. But I started out completely accidentally in broadcasting because I loved England. I've been an Anglophile all my life, and I went to Vassar College in New York, and they had a program that sent 2 graduates a year to work at the BBC. And I barely even knew what the BBC was, but it was working papers for a year. So I went, and that started my career in broadcasting.
Before we get into the career in broadcasting, I want to go back to your mother a little bit. So your mother, not just a Broadway actress, a successful Broadway actress who then goes into film, makes some movies we may have even heard of, with Vincent Price and such.
Yes.
What was that childhood like? Were you aware that your mom was this actress, this celebrity, or did you know what that meant?
She wasn't really a celebrity. I think she was a celebrity before me, before my brother and I were born. She didn't get married till she was 38 years old, and that was old in 1944 when she was married. She had had this glamorous career in New York on Broadway. She was in kind of a landmark play called The Children's Hour, which was written by Lillian Hellman. And Lillian Hellman was in her 20s, my mother was in her 20s, and the reason it was a landmark play is that it was about 2 teachers in a girls' school, and there's a student, a kid, who, for reasons of her own, decides to spread the rumor that she saw these 2 women kissing. Mm-hmm. So this was scandal in the 30s. And the play went on in Broadway for 2 or 3 years. It traveled around the country, and it was actually banned in Boston, but never played in the city where I now live. And so my mother got very good notices for that, great reviews. She went on to do a couple of other plays. I saw all the publicity of the pictures of her then. She was quite beautiful. She saved, or somebody saved, all the reviews, all the little notes that came to her from her admirers on the bouquets that she would get on opening night. And some of her clothes. She still had some of her clothes, these long kind of dressing gowns, satin dressing gowns. So, and it had only happened, 10 or 20 years, but it seemed like another world. Yeah. And so I thought she was the most glamorous creature. And yet, she, at that point, was a housewife in Southern California. A fairly, I would say, desperate housewife, in that you live that life and then it's over. And she chose to have it be over because there weren't very many good parts in the movies. We were living in Southern California. You could be, in those days, kind of harridans, horrible older women or witches or weirdos. And she said, no, I don't want to do that. But I always thought that she had had the perfect life.
Having had that upbringing, does it make working with actors easier for you, do you think, in some way?
Yes, because she was also troubled. That's why I say Desperate Housewife. I mean, it's very hard to have that thing, that need to perform, and that kind of euphoria. I don't know another word for it, but the altered state that you get in when you perform. I think it's the same altered state maybe you get in when you write, if you're a creative writer, or dance, and so she had that. She was celebrated for it, and then it stopped, or she stopped it. So there she is at home, and she was very intense as a person. She liked feeling, she liked to talk. She liked to not just glide through life. She wanted to get to the real deal. So working with actors, I have great sympathy for whatever the complexity is that compels them to go and do this scary thing. I feel actors are very exposed people. They're willing to live in the world of feelings, and I like that.
And it's interesting, I think that it probably helps you to do what you do, having the upbringing you did, to understand that unique psyche,
Yes, maybe. I actually hadn't really thought of that. There is also a way that, having been on the receiving end of that as a child and growing up, this is like going to a shrink. Is that there can be a little impatience, when these actors need attention a lot. And there is, dare I say, a little narcissism involved. So, that can wear thin.
Yeah.
But as a producer, you have to zip it up and not say anything.
You get into public television.
Fell into public television.
WGBH.
Yes, Boston.
And then you somehow end up heading Masterpiece.
Yeah. How did that happen, Ernie? How did that happen?
I mean, if people read your book, they understand how that shift happened. But really, if you step back and look at it, wow, you got quite an opportunity at a very important time.
Lucky.
Yeah.
Well, I worked at WGBH. Okay, I like to say I had a meteoric rise to the top. I worked at WGBH for 17 years.
But you're an overnight success.
But I was an overnight success. No, I had a mentor. A man who was a producer in public television in the early 70s, Henry Beckton. I worked for him as a production assistant, a lowly coffee getter, timer for shows in the early 70s. Then he rose to become the president of WGBH, which I should say, for those of your viewers who may not know it, is kind of the flagship public television station in Boston, out of which comes not just Masterpiece, but Nova and Frontline, American Experience, Antiques Roadshow. None of which had happened then. And he built WGBH into this powerhouse. And Masterpiece was born just before he became the president. And so I went off and did documentaries, did nightly shows, was doing all kinds of things. I left and worked on a feature film. And then my predecessor, Joan Wilson, died an untimely early death. And Henry had asked me, she was ill for a year and the prognosis wasn't good, and he had asked me, Henry Beckton, who was my mentor, had asked me to read some scripts. And I didn't know it, but he was checking me out as a candidate for this job. And when she did die, I was urged to apply for it, and he took a chance because I had a learning curve that went kind of like straight up, not like this, because I was in the deep end and pregnant, as it turned out, which I was offered the job and got the results of the pregnancy test within 15 minutes of each other one day.
Oh, wow. So when you step into that job, though, is there fear, panic, excitement? Which overwhelms you the most when you think, oh my God? And also, we have to understand, Masterpiece was already relatively successful. Yes. It was something.
I was very, how to say this, not arrogant. I thought, well, how hard can this be? And as it turned out, it got really hard because I think I came into Masterpiece at the top of its first peak. I mean, if I could chart this out, here's Masterpiece starting with the first Churchills, which Alistair Cook always said he wasn't sure there would ever be a second year of Masterpiece Theater after the first Churchill. Too many wigs. Anyway, so upstairs, downstairs, Bills, 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 I, Claudius, to The Jewel in the Crown, which was 1984, I think. And that's about when I came in, 1985. And then, almost immediately, the British started making fewer and fewer big events like that. And it became, for years, kind of small mini-series, less period drama. The Brits started going off and making more sort of gritty, hard-hitting things. And so it got very hard to find programs. Then we lost our underwriter, Mobile Corporation, who used to give us tons of money. When I came on, the money was just flowing in. The money dried up, the shows dried up, and for a while it was kind of minor piece theater, you know. We used to think, and then we did a major rebranding of the series. It was a major facelift of the series in 2008, roughly. And I undertook that because I had a sense that this beautiful jewel was fading, that the bloom was off the rose, and that I was going to be the captain on whose watch the ship went down. And I thought, I have to do something. Anyway, we did a major look at ourselves. We hired a great guy named Bob Knapp, a solo practitioner branding guy who understood we didn't want any baloney mission statements. We wanted, what can we do with very little money? And he gave us a couple of ideas which we implemented, and taking theater out of the title. Masterpiece became Masterpiece. Making the genres at specific times of year. Classic is in the winter, mysteries in the summer. So we did those things, and the ratings started going up. We did the complete Jane Austen, then we did Little Dorrit, and then we began to win Emmys. And then we were offered a couple of shows that changed our fortunes forever. One being Sherlock, and the other being Downton Abbey. So that's why I say I came in at one of Masterpiece's high points, and then miraculously, now this high point is higher than that.
Yeah.
And who gets that chance?
So then where do you go from there, though? You know, I mean, is there part of you that says,
Ernie,
okay, I'm done, thank you, next? Or do you say, no, I want more, I want to keep this going?
Well, the temptation is to just, say,
right, you
bye-bye.
know, you can't, I mean, Downton Abbey, how do you top it?
How do you top
the number one program in the world.
Is it?
Yeah.
No, is it?
Number one drama series in the world.
Where'd you get that?
From stuff from Downton.
From somebody told you?
Yeah.
Well,
Guinness Book of World Records, best reviewed show in the world.
Well, that is true.
Yeah.
That is true. It has, as we say, solid gold reviews. It has been tremendous, and the ratings keep going up and up. As I go around the country, doing, kind of fundraising for Masterpiece or events, like here in Houston, people come up to me to talk about what the series has meant to them. And they approach very emotionally to say, I watched this show with my mother, or I watch it with my kids. Now I watch Downton with my kid. I watched Upstairs, Downstairs with my parents. This has been the drama of my life. Thank you, thank you. And I think, wow, this means something. This to have kept this level of quality for 40-something years means something. And how could I leave?
Okay, let me inside your head for a minute. You have a huge success with both Sherlock and Downton. Now you've got to pick the next products. Do you look for things that borrow from those, or do you look in a totally different direction?
Well, all the programs are made in England. Okay, so Downton has created just an outpouring of what's called returning precinct shows. This sounds terribly technical. What it means is, you do 10 hours one year, and then with any luck, you can come back and visit the same characters the next year for 10 hours and on and on. Precinct means they're located in a central spot, like Precinct. It used to be like Hill Street Blues or St. Elsewhere hospital shows. Downton Abbey, believe it or not, is a precinct show because it's at Downton Abbey, Highclere Castle, mostly. So there have been lots of them. We are spoiled for choice, as the Brits say. But there is one. So I should say, I do know now, I'm pretty sure I know now, at least some of the ingredients that will draw the Downton audience back. I think they love a little bit of Jeopardy melodrama. They love an incredibly interesting social time, as the beginning of the 20th century was. And there should be a Romeo and Juliet. There should be a few lovers. Will they, won't they, can they, can't they? So we have a bunch of things coming, and one of which I can talk about here because we're about to start shooting it next month. It's called Indian Summers. And like The Jewel in the Crown, it is set in India in the 1930s and 40s, in that period which was just the end of the British Raj. And it is about two groups of people. The British government there, the Raj, the viceroy, and all his people who love each other, betray each other, live, die, and a family, an Indian family, one of whom is the attaché to the viceroy. So you have upstairs, downstairs is not the right description of it because these are not different classes, but entirely different cultures. But it's at the time, it's going to be repeated. It's about the summers when the British government would go to the hill stations in India and build little Englands in the cooler place. So we're going to do this series returning every summer between the 1930s to 1947, the time of Indian independence.
Oh, you're excited about it.
I'm very excited.
Do you still get this excited over projects?
I do.
Not old hat for you at all?
Not at all. I have, just literally, I have on my iPad, I have scripts, incoming scripts to read of proposed projects. And it's like, I used to feel going to the library, I can't wait to get my hands on these books. And then you read some of them and oh, not quite. And then you get the shivers when you come across one that works.
Ever worried you're going to pass on the good idea?
Always.
Like some that you,
Are you kidding?
almost did in the past?
Or did pass on.
I didn't want to say that.
We can talk about it, Ernie, because just us,
Okay,
between us,
Downton Abbey, nah.
No,
I'm not going to take it.
I did. And I didn't pass on it because I didn't think it would be good. I passed on it because we were just doing the new Upstairs, Downstairs, the second iteration of Upstairs, Downstairs. And I thought, this might be too much like Upstairs, Downstairs, because it is Upstairs, Downstairs. And I thought, no. And I was lucky, incredibly lucky, because it was offered elsewhere. It's produced by Carnival Film and Television in England, and they shopped it around in this country. And thank God, every other executive in American television passed on it, and it came around again. And by that time, I had figured it out. So we got on board.
Why do you think Downton worked to the level it did, where the new Upstairs, Downstairs didn't hit that same level, when they're so similar in story?
Well, first of all, the Downton Abbey had Downton Abbey. Let's not forget the setting was, instead of the interior of Eaton Place, which was built, BBC built it in studio, it was set in this beautiful Highclere Castle, and it had a much bigger cast. There are fully 20 characters in Downton Abbey who you care about. You could name them, from Mrs. Patmore, Daisy, Thomas. You can go right through. There are about 10 down and 10 up that you care about and want to know about. I think Upstairs, Downstairs had a smaller cast, and it was a slightly darker approach. It was in the late 30s, coming up to World War II, then during World War II, and so they went for a slightly darker idea and time. There is a quality to Downton Abbey that I think is the cherry on the cake. I think Julian Fellows, who writes it and created it, is a very optimistic, kind of warm-hearted person, just who he is.
Yeah.
It's about everybody in this community trying to do the right thing. Kind of, for their own reasons. Thomas, but everybody's trying to kind of take care of themselves, each other, their family, and the community together. And I think that strikes a chord to all of us these days who live kind of without community. I think it's harder and harder for us all to find a safe community or an enduring community. And our television entertainment, as great as it is, Breaking Bad, Mad Men, True Detective, all that stuff, as great as it is full of very dark people and dark kind of anti-heroes. Yeah. So I think there's something kind of old-fashioned and comforting to see beautiful people falling in love and being together.
Well, thank you for giving us this community, sharing it with us, sharing the stories, and thank you for Masterpiece.
Oh, thank you, Ernie.
Rebecca Eaton.
To order a DVD of this or any episode of Interviews, please visit HoustonPublicMedia.org.
Tonight's programming on Houston Public Media made possible in part by Houston Public Media presents the 2014 Texas Tribune Festival. In an election year with a legislative session coming up, politicians and public policy officials will convene on the UT Austin campus to discuss state and national issues, from public education to immigration, healthcare to energy. The conversation begins September 19th through the 21st. Registration available at texastribune.org/festival. The new Houston Antiques Art and Design Show will feature over 100 dealers from across the U.S., Canada, and Europe in beautiful room settings, presenting fine antique furniture, silver, paintings, antique and estate jewelry, and so much more. Friday, September 19th through Sunday, September 21st at the George R. Brown Convention Center. More information at HoustonAntiquesArtDesign.com.
In art and in life, James McNeill Whistler radically changed the course of modern art.
Whistler was fun to be around.
A gadfly,
a barbed wit that could cut people to shreds.
He was a volatile person.
I really can't say anything very nice about him.
You didn't know what you were going to get with Whistler, which was maybe part of the fun.
A profile of the original art star, tonight at 9.
Suddenly, one moment, there's the most magical light.
The Prince of Wales reveals the tradition of art in his family through the ages.
No, you see, not quite spelt right there. Napoleon. Do you think, how did I do that? Which part of me has it come from?
Explore a colorful palette of majestic art, tonight at 10.
Hello, I'm George Connolly, a member of the Houston Public Media Foundation Board and proud to be your legacy ambassador. I'm here today to ask you to join me with a gift to Houston Public Media. Leaving a legacy is not just for the rich and famous. People from all walks of life have supported us with gifts from their estates. Please call Stephanie Carroll at 713-743-8458 to learn more about leaving a legacy of enlightenment.
They were fighters, battling their own demons.
That was a blow so enormous that it's amazing that he was able to climb out of it.
They were mavericks, defying their class for the common good.
People who were poor knew that she'd be fighting for them, that she would be their champion.
They were visionaries who changed the course of a nation. They were the Roosevelts, from Ken Burns.
The new documentary premieres Sunday night at 7 with a rebroadcast at 9. This is KUHT, Houston Public Media, TV 8.
Welcome to the program. I'm Charlie Rose. The program is Charlie Rose the Week.